I just spent 7 days aboard Royal Caribbean's brand new Star of the Seas, and let me tell you, it was an experience that I'll never forget. From the food and entertainment to the rooms and hidden downsides no one talks about, I've got a lot to share. Whether you're planning your first cruise or just curious if the Star of the Seas lives up to the hype, this is my honest, unfiltered review after a full week on board. And also, if you want to go ahead and book your next cruise with the Star of the Seas or any other cruise ship, feel free to check out the prices in the link down below in the description. Using my link would greatly help out, and if you have any questions regarding Star of the Seas, just comment back and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. Now, before I dive into the juicy details, and there are some stories I can't wait to share, let me give you the quick rundown of our itinerary. Day 1 was boarding day. Day 2, we hit Coco Cay. Day 3 was a sea day, which honestly felt longer than it should have. Day 4 took us to St. Thomas. Day 5 was St. Kitts, and then days 6 and 7 were back-to-back sea days. You heard that right, 2 days at sea. But more on that later. Getting there and boarding. So let's start from the very beginning, getting to this floating ship. We rented a car from Hertz and drove about 40 minutes to get to Port Canaveral. Now here's where things got interesting, and by interesting, I mean surprisingly convenient for once in my life. We rented from Hertz specifically because they have a drop-off location just 5 minutes from the port, and they offer a free shuttle directly to the cruise terminal. But here's the kicker. When we took the shuttle, it actually dropped us off at the VIP entrance. The driver casually mentioned it that we didn't need to worry about our boarding time, which was supposed to be 2 p.m. Now, I'm not sure if this happens every time, but apparently there's this little known hack. If you rent from Hertz in Orlando and use their shuttle service, you might just get the VIP treatment. This meant that we boarded the ship 2 hours earlier. And who knew that choosing the right rental car company would mean that you can skip lines? It's like finding a cheat code in real life. First impressions, this thing is massive. Walking up to the Star of the Seas was like approaching a small city that someone decided to put on the water. This ship is absolutely massive compared to other cruise ships that I've been on, and I've been on a few. It's the kind of big that makes you feel slightly uncomfortable, like you're about to be swallowed by a whale, except the whale has a casino and 17 different restaurants. Now here's my pro tip before we go any further, and this could save you some serious headaches. Make sure you have your luggage tags already attached to your bags before you get there. Also, you're allowed to bring 12 cans of soda per stateroom and 1 bottle of wine per adult. And please, for the love of all that is holy, fill out your health questionnaire the day before. Nothing says I'm prepared for a vacation standing in line filling out paperwork while everyone else is already sipping pina coladas. Oh, and buy a lanyard too before you get on the ship. They'll charge you about like $10 for one on board, and trust me, you'll want one. It's way cheaper on Amazon though. It makes carrying your room key so much more convenient, and you'll feel like you're part of some exclusive club, even though literally everyone has one. The check-in process was surprisingly fast compared to other cruise ships that I've experienced. We actually got into the boat around noon, and even though our official boarding time wasn't until 2 p.m. My advice, get there early. The earlier you board, the earlier you can start your vacation, and the earlier you can claim that perfect spot by the pool before it turns into a can of sardines. The room. Cozy is one way to put it. Once we got on board, we headed straight to our room to drop off our stuff and get our key cards. We had booked an ocean view balcony room, and it was going to be home for me, my wife, my brother, and his wife. 4 adults in 1 cruise ship room. The room had 1 king bed and a sofa bed, which sounds reasonable until you actually try to sleep 4 people in there. Here's some free advice from someone who learned the hard way. If you're sharing a room with 4 people, ask for cots. Seriously. The cots were actually way more comfortable than the sofa bed, which felt like sleeping on a slightly padded piece of cardboard. And if you prefer a firmer sleeping surface, then by all means go with the sofa bed. But if you value your spine and your sanity, get the cots. The room itself was a decent size, and the shower was surprisingly spacious for a cruise ship. There was plenty of drawer space and cabinet space, enough for 3 people to unpack uncomfortably. With 4 people trying to unpack, things got a bit tight. My wife, being the saint that she is, she volunteered to keep all her stuff in her suitcase because she doesn't really like unpacking things anyways. Sometimes it pays to marry someone who's naturally organized, or in this case, maybe naturally lazy about unpacking. Food and dining, the good, the bad, and the surprisingly decent. Now let's talk about food, because let's be honest, that's half the reason we go on cruises. There were basically 3 types of dining experiences we hit up every day, and I'm gonna break them down for you. First up was the Windjammer, which is the main buffet. This is where we had breakfast every morning and sometimes lunch and dinner when we were feeling lazy. What I loved about the Windjammer was that it had two identical sides for people to grab food from, which is genius because it actually helps with crowds. You're not stuck in one massive line watching someone debate between scrambled and over easy eggs for 5 minutes. Seating was never really a problem, which was a pleasant surprise. I've been on cruises where finding a table felt like playing musical chairs, except everyone's holding plates of food and nobody's having fun. The second dining experience was the main dining room, which was specifically for dinner and sometimes breakfast and lunch. Now, this is where things got impressive. The dining experience was incredibly professional and surprisingly fast. In my 5 cruises, this was hands down the fastest dining room service I've ever experienced. Our dining time was 8:30 p.m. every night, and we were still able to make it to the 10 p.m. shows. That's saying something about the ship, because cruise ship dining rooms are usually where time goes to die. We actually became friends with our waiters, shout out to Anthony, May, and Roosevelt if you guys are watching, who made sure we never had an empty bread basket or empty glass of water. The third type of dining was what I like to call the specialty restaurants, and these were honestly some of my favorites. Sorrento served some seriously good pizza, like surprisingly good for cruise ship pizza. Base Camp had the best burgers, hot dogs, and tater tots on the ship, and Pearl Cafe was this really nice casual spot that served drinks and light desserts, perfect for when you wanted to pretend you were sophisticated while eating a cookie. There were plenty of other restaurants we didn't try, but honestly, over 7 days, these 3 specialty spots became our go-to places. Sometimes you find what works and you stick with it, you know? Entertainment and activities. Actually pretty impressive. Here's where Star of the Seas really started to shine, and I mean that literally because some of these shows had more lights than a Vegas casino. My suggestion is that once you check in through the Royal Caribbean app, reserve your shows immediately. But first, reserve your dining room time. That's priority number 1. They have shows to accommodate both the 5:30 p.m. dining and the 8:30 p.m. dining times, so don't worry about missing out. Now, I'm gonna be completely honest here. I'm not usually a theater or musical person. I'm more of a watch Netflix in my pajamas kind of guy. And sure, I'll sometimes watch a movie at the theaters. But these shows were really impressive. My favorite was Soul, which is this really cool ice skating show. I'm talking about professional level ice skating with lights, music, costumes. All of this was done on a moving cruise ship. We actually watched this show twice because it was that good. Second favorite was Torque, which is an aqua theater show. So imagine like Cirque du Soleil, but with water and people diving from heights that made me nervous just watching. The performers were incredibly talented and the production value was through the roof. Third was Create, which was this very creative musical that I honestly didn't expect to enjoy as much as I did. And finally, there was the Back to the Future musical, which was exactly what it sounds like. A Broadway-style musical based on the movie. It was cheesy in all the right ways. Now, there were other shows like Ocean Odyssey and Pirates vs. Mermaids, but honestly, you can just walk into these shows without any reservations. The main shows that I mentioned, those are the ones that you want to book ahead of time. Besides the main entertainment, we spent a lot of time at different seminars, sports competitions like pickleball, volleyball, ping pong, and dodgeball, and we also rode the water slides, which I highly recommend you do even if you're an adult. We also hit up trivia games, which became our casual way to grab a bite and hang out. And if you're into gambling, honestly, you can just waste your money away at the casino. Now, I'm a huge sports fan, so during our 7 days on the ship, they also have like a sports themed restaurant called Playmakers, where you can watch the sports with other sports enthusiasts. There's nothing better than being in the room when the entire room cheers when the Chargers score a touchdown. And yes, we went to the gym every day. Their fitness center had practically every machine that you could want, whether you're into strength training or cardio. It was actually one of the better cruise ship gyms that I've used. Ports and excursions, the mixed bag. Now let's talk about the ports because this is where things got a bit mixed. We stopped at Coco Cay, St. Thomas, and St. Kitts. Personally, I really enjoyed the activities on the ship, so I'm not always rushing to get off at every port. But we did explore a couple of them. Coco Cay was absolutely fantastic. It's basically Royal Caribbean's private island, and it felt like a tropical paradise. They served free food, burgers, funnel cakes, fries, and it was a perfect way to just relax on the beach. The weather was gorgeous, and there's something special about being on a private island where everything is included, except the water park though. St. Thomas was more of a quick shopping trip for us. You can do souvenir shopping right on the dock, which is convenient and free. I decided to skip St. Kitts though entirely, which might have been a mistake, but sometimes you just need a day to recharge and just want to stay on the ship. Here's the thing about cruise ports, you don't have to get off at every single one. Sometimes the best part of cruising is just enjoying the ship itself while it's being a bit less crowded because half the passengers are off exploring. The overall vibe, surprisingly not crowded. One thing that really surprised me about the Star of the Seas was that it didn't feel overcrowded. For one of the largest cruise ships in the world, they've done a really good job at designing the layout so you're not walking forever to get from one end to the other. The staff was absolutely fantastic, and I don't think I had a single complaint about the service. Anytime I needed something, I was able to get it, and everyone was incredibly accommodating. The ship was clean, well organized, and there were certain areas like Central Park that felt almost surreal, like being in a garden while floating in the middle of an ocean. Despite being one of the largest cruise ships in the world, the design is strategic. You don't feel like you're hiking across a small country just to get from your room to dinner. Price and value, the reality check. Now let's talk about money because that's what everyone really wants to know. We sailed in October of 2025 and bought our tickets of July of that same year, so about 4 months in advance. We each paid around $1,400 for our tickets, but here's where it gets frustrating though. Closer to our departure date, we checked online and the tickets had actually gotten cheaper. We tried contacting Royal Caribbean to get the difference refunded, but they said no dice. So here's my advice. Don't book too far in advance perhaps. Try checking prices closer to the sail date if you're willing to risk it a bit. Even with the $1,400 we paid though, I still think it was worth it. But keep in mind, that's just for the cruise itself. You may also need to pay for Wi-Fi, and you'll want to buy your own drinks, whether it's soda, alcohol, or whatever. You're also allowed to bring 1 wine bottle per adult and 12 cans of soda per stateroom, but when we brought it onto our ship, security was pretty relaxing about checking. As for gratuities, they automatically charge you every day, but you can go to guest services and opt out if you want to handle tips personally. We chose to give our tips directly to our stateroom attendants and dining room servers, the people who actually made our experience even better. The verdict, would I do it again? So here's the question, would I go again for the same price? After 7 days on Star of the Seas, my honest verdict is yes, absolutely. If you're looking for a floating city with non-stop entertainment, incredible food, and service that actually lives up to the hype, this ship delivers. And I'm genuinely glad I went with Star of the Seas. The entertainment was top-notch, the staff and service were incredible, and the food was way better than I expected. There's a good chance I'll cruise again within the next 2 years, but before then, I want to try Icon of the Seas or Wonder of the Seas or Legend of the Seas, I think is what it's called, to see how they compare. But here's what I want you to remember. Cruising is not for everyone. If you hate crowds, don't like being on a schedule, or get seasick especially, maybe stick to land-based vacations. But if you want to unpack once and wake up in a new place every day while someone else handles all the cooking and cleaning, then cruising might be your thing. The Star of the Seas proved to me that cruise ships have really come a long way from the floating buffets they used to be. This felt more like a resort that happened to be moving and on water, and honestly, that's not a bad way to spend a week. So there you have it, my completely honest review of 7 days on Star of the Seas. It wasn't perfect, but it was pretty damn good. And sometimes that's all you need for a great vacation. If you're thinking about booking a cruise, again, it'd greatly help if you use my link down below in the description. Let me know in the comments what questions you have, and if you've been on Star of the Seas yourself, I'd love to hear your experience about it down below. Did you love it as much as I did, or did you have a completely different experience? Thanks so much for watching, and make sure to check out these videos next for more videos on Star of the Seas.